Hi, this is Origin Stories with Rachel Stevenson, and I'm here with Simone and Roxy, my two daughters. You've already met them. We decided very soon after the episodes we recently posted to revisit something that came up in Roxy's episode.
Yes.
You said something that really struck me. You said that my parents' life together is kind of like a romance movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've talked about this for years, and we figured let's get together and tell the story, which, by the way, may not be completely true because I feel like I've heard it in bits and pieces, not directly from my dad, definitely not directly from my mom. And I've retold parts of it, right? Mm-hmm. You guys have heard some of it. And this has clearly been romanticized to some degree. Because of the way, it's come together for us. I also just want to acknowledge that there's some tragedy in this romance, which I think actually makes it more romantic, because you see like longing and love and passion and regret and like all these deep things that are real life, and that, a lot of us, when we look at art or listen to art or watch art or whatever, we like feel. So anyway, we feel like, this is very real. And we wanted to share that story.
Yeah. Which, by the way, we did already, but it didn't record.
Yeah, so this is
Take two. Yeah, so we might be a little drained.
No, but we're committed. We're committed to this. We're committed to this. We're gonna make it happen.
Okay.
So let's start with the characters in the story. You want to describe the characters in the story? Margie and Steve.
Who do you want to do?
Yeah, each of
Margie
you take one character.
Or Stevie.
I'll do Stevie.
I was gonna do that because that's what I'm gonna name a kid. Okay,
Yeah.
go.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, he was this bad boy, too cool for school character.
Yeah.
He rode a motorcycle. I wanted to, say that because I was just thinking of when I was first born, and I don't know who in particular, but I know you said that people said I looked like him.
Oh,
or that thing. So I just thought I had that connection.
Yeah.
So,
You definitely look the most like him.
that's the character in the movie.
And Margie?
And Margie, some of her sisters described her as more bookish, kind of studious, the smart sister, and
Still very beautiful. Reminds me of Three Girls I Know.
I don't even get that reference.
I'm talking of
us.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Anyways, so you kind of have kind of opposites in some respects.
Yeah.
That's right.
So like I said, that's the trope.
That's right. And so the scene of their meeting, based on what we've heard, is they were on the lakefront in New Orleans, teen hangout. My dad, his motorcycle, his friends, they were probably drinking and chilling. And so, he saw her, he was drawn to her, and they started a pretty intense relationship pretty quickly. So intense, and this gets to my mom as a reader and a writer. She wrote him a poem when she was 16. This is the poem that I shared with everyone the first episode. Life is living day by day, hour by hour, and looking into the future since you. Life is much more when you have someone to live for. The seriousness of their connection,
especially at that
age,
right,
was real.
Yeah.
They got pregnant, right? I was born when she was 17, he was 18, so really, really young, and they both grew up in Catholic families. The thing to do in the 70s was to get married,
Right.
right? And have the baby. And so that's what they did. I do have a really quick, funny story to tell. Since it was a Catholic wedding, they both had to go through the confession experience. And my dad told me this story that, I'm really happy he shared. It was funny. It's one of the few stories he actually told me himself. But he was in the confessional. The priest knew why they were getting married and wanted my dad to confess that, he'd committed this sin. And my dad didn't quite go there. I think he confessed about maybe drinking too much and skipping class and whatever else, but didn't quite get to the thing the priest was expecting. And so the priest point blank asked him, "So, son, were you intimate?" And my dad was like, yeah, actually, yeah. "Well, son, how many times?" And my dad was like, "Thousands." Well, anyway, he's in the pew doing penance after the confession, and he and my mom started to whisper to each other. And I think my dad said to her, Margie, did the priest ask you how many times?" And she was like, yeah. And he said, so what'd you say? And she said, "Once." Anyway, so very different approaches to this moment.
Yeah.
They get married, and so we had almost 5 years of life as a nuclear family. And though I don't have a lot of memories, I do very specifically remember this one time we went to Joe Brown Park in New Orleans with our dog Shady, who jumped in a pond full of algae and got all tangled up and was practically drowning. My dad had to jump in, the hero dad, rescue the dog, pull him out. He smelled like algae. We were all relieved and happy and laughing and piled into the car with a wet dad and a wet dog and drove home. But I just remember the kind of energy of, being in this family, being with my mom, being with my dad. So that nuclear family ended. That was the end of their relationship together, their marriage, their life together. The story doesn't end there. My dad's story doesn't end there. And actually, all the things that happen after in his life, I feel, are very much connected to this romance. For the years after my mom died, he did date. But you've heard the stories.
Yeah. I mean, he had girlfriends, some long-term girlfriends, but when it got to the point of some of the women saying, "I want to commit and start our own family and take that step," he just wasn't able to do it.
Your dad was upfront about the fact that it was hard for him, I guess, to get super close to you because you reminded him so much of Margie. So we know that was on his mind, of course.
Yeah.
And I said this, that he's, a pretty good case of self-sabotage. And it's that when these women wanted to take these next steps in their relationship, he couldn't do it. And my thinking was that he just didn't want to do that because it kind of opened up this possibility that, something bad might happen.
And you have that reason and possibility, or it can be both, that he just didn't love anybody as much as he loved, your mom, right? And this goes to a point that I made before, that I haven't really shared this, kind of thought or interpretation before, but I was thinking, okay, because they were so young when they had my mom, and you were an entirely unplanned, they knew the risk, and there were some reasons that your mother may have wanted to start her own family, right, and move into her own place, right?
Right.
So, I mean, part of me thinks that maybe he was doing it for her, right? Like, he was a husband first, and maybe not a father first. So when your mom passed away, he loved my mom, obviously, that was his daughter, but I think he had a kid because his wife wanted one, was more inclined to that, and he loved her so much that it's like, okay, I'll again do this for you, right?
Yeah.
And with you.
That's what
And
I
with
mean.
you.
And with you.
And with you.
Well, that's the thing, with you. So when you talk about that memory you have of your family, it's like, he's married to the love of his life. He has a beautiful daughter that he loves, his dog. But then when the kind of core part of that family is gone,
Yeah. For many years. I mean, that was his life. And while he's dating on and off and pulling away from these women when they try to make things more serious, I'm getting older. And also at this point, I'm realizing that there are things I don't know and that I want more information, and he's not able to share, right? And I start to kind of poke around and ask questions, and the older I get, the harder it becomes between the two of us because of the fact that we aren't communicating, and there's so much I don't know about his life with my mom. And things I wanted to know about his life with my mom. I mean, this was my family. And so I also watched him, you know, the self-sabotage that you talk about. You know, I watched him go down that road. So there were just a lot of questions that I had. And most of the questions I had weren't answered when he was alive. And you know, when he died, I was left with them. Now, there is one thing that I thought made a lot of sense to share as part of this retelling, which is, you know, a big part of my parents' story. It's the night my mom died. You know, I found out when I was at my dad's memorial in New Orleans. So this is a few days after his death, from a friend of his, that my mom and dad were not alone when she died. That in fact there was a couple in the back seat of the car, and this couple was standing in front of me at their memorial, and it became clear that I didn't know what happened that night. They had information that I really wanted, and so a few days later, this guy, my dad's friend, ended up sending me an email, and in the email he shared some information which I'm gonna share now, because, you know, we talk about the romance movie. This is a very critical scene.
I was gonna say this is like a written scene that would be included. Yeah,
that's right. I remember looking out my window toward my right, and I saw a car ahead on a side road approaching a stop sign. As I was watching the car, I assumed Margie was too, because all of a sudden the car didn't stop for the stop sign, but accelerated onto the highway. Just as I saw it, Steve saw it, and Margie yelled, "Watch out." The next thing was our car started to roll over side to side from the impact at least 2 times. Then we landed right side up in a swampy area well off the highway. And then I heard Steve yelling, "Margie." Margie was partially ejected from the car. Her waist was on the doorway, with her upper body out of the car and her lower body inside it. Steve pulled her into the car and held her tight, calling her name over and over. Her face was undamaged. She was still beautiful. I told Steve we had to get out of the car. He would not listen to me. He just kept calling out to Margie. So, you know, we think about that, and we think about the man, the serial monogamist who never committed, the father who did tell his daughter a few times how much she reminded him of her mom, the man who didn't share much at all about his time with Margie, you know, in life, and didn't share anything about the night she died. The man who went down this path and ultimately died, right? You know, I carried a lot of complicated feelings about him and that, but after hearing this information from my dad's friend, boy, did that story land for me. And the depth of the pain he experienced, the intensity of the loss that he experienced, it really just sort of hit me in the face. And, you know, thinking of him that night, I mean, that is the night that basically determined the rest of his life.
Right. And this, you know, reminds me of when he wrote to you in an email once in response to you kind of probing him to talk about his experience and his grief and talk about your mom, is how he's like, do you not think, you know, not a day goes by that I don't think about your mom, or I don't think about the night that she died. And I mean, when I was younger, sometimes it would cross my mind, I wouldn't think about it too much, but it did cross my mind sometimes, like, okay, he had a daughter and he had grandchildren that he was alive to meet some of and know of, the last one being born. So you know, why weren't we all enough, right? And I mean, of course, that's an aspect of it where, you know, if he would have just, and I'm saying it like it's simple, if he would have just, you know, done this, but I don't know. But the story, what I'm trying to say is that the story does give more context to it, and it's like there's so much history there that we just don't know about. And also we talked about at the beginning of this, like this whole video idea came from the fact that it could be a movie, right? A cinematic piece, and people might romanticize stories like this or love like this, the intensity of it. And it reminds me of a time that I told an old friend of mine in high school, sophomore year, about my grandparents and what had happened. And I like rarely tell my friends this story. So this was like, you know, one of the only times. And I remember her reaction kind of being like, well, I would want that, you know, like in a partner, talking about my grandfather, because, you know, he never really recovered, right? In multiple ways, he never recovered. And she was essentially saying, well, that's kind of the love I would want. And, I mean, it really shows you how that's somebody who's really removed from the situation.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of in some ways not really real to them because it's not their family.
Right, so you just said how it demonstrates that this person is really removed. There are no emotional or biological ties. And it's because, you know, a lot of people, even maybe when they hear this or just whatever, think about this, they don't know what recovery or not recovering really entails, because people have these different ways to cope. And with your dad, it was, you know, these non-committal behaviors, and then there was alcohol, you know, that whole thing, which we will talk about, the, you know, lasting impacts of your mother's death on him. What I think, and I'm pretty sure this is true, what your friend meant was that, or old friend, sorry, was that she didn't want, she wouldn't want her husband to recover in the sense of, you know, marrying somebody else, loving somebody else.
In her eyes, moving on.
Which, I mean, that's a part of what happened to your dad, or whatever, just what impacted his decisions, but that's not reality. It can't just be this, right? I mean, there are some stories, I guess, I would hear, or maybe see on, you know, in media, of people, you know, having a healthy, I guess, relationship to a traumatic event, but combined with, you know, the love, but also his age. I don't know, it's a very hard, I don't know, it's a complicated mix of things.
Yeah.
And also, I do want to mention, like, I understand why it's easy to kind of view things in a simplistic way.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to make a note, like, I'm not saying, like, I wouldn't want that. Like, sometimes I do think, like, damn, like, I would want that too. Like, you know, not moving on.
Oh, right.
Well, I think it's fair to say.
Because it's a very real...
And because
yeah.
it's also, like, thinking about, for me, it's like, yeah, those were my grandparents, and I know he loved her, so for me, it's kind of like, that's what love is. You know, that's
Right.
kind of like,
Right.
kind of the sense that,
Right.
yeah.
Well, this has been great. The point you made about some people have healthy relationships to traumatic events. Actually, I think that is a nice way to land here, because part of what we shared in this retelling is a very traumatic event. And it's a traumatic event that, you know, ended a very particular way for my father. But through our analysis of this, and like, even if it's sometimes we're like, you know, making things up a little bit because it's building off of our understanding, which is what it is, but it's helping us to think about those decisions, these moments, the implications, what it means, which is going to help you guys navigate your own relationships, and like, what are the fantasies, what are the realities, what do you want from partnership. So it positions you better to have a healthy relationship to this trauma, which is part of our family history.
Yeah.
Anyway, This has been
Fun
deep.
Wednesday night.
This is a fun
2
Wednesday night.
hours for
Yeah.
probably like a 20.
Let's hope take 2 actually recorded.
It did.
Imagine it's just a black
Come here,
screen.
Roxy.
Oh God. Okay, let's go check it out. Bye.
Bye.